Should I start a countdown? Is it recording right now?
Yep.
Yeah, it just started recording, and it.
All right. Hello, welcome to Amateur Theory Podcast. It may have been a while by the time that you see this video, but we just love to keep our audience waiting. Today we're going to be talking about the Oscar nominations. At the time of this recording, this will be the day before the Oscar award ceremony. So we have, since it's the day before, obviously we haven't seen it, so we are going to talk about it as if you, audience, don't already know what the award options are. But I thought it may lead for or make for an interesting discussion. And after that, we're going to talk about a movie that came out last month but has been on our minds, and that is Godzilla versus King Kong. So I've been taking a look at these nominations, and I've been curious to know, what do you all think? What do you think of the nominations? Are they reasonable? Are there any surprising additions and/or snubs for Best Picture, Best Actor, etc.?
So I only looked at the Best Picture because I didn't see what all the actors and things were. Of the 8 movies nominated, I have seen 2 of them. And
are they the same 2 I've seen?
They were the ones we saw on this podcast. So I don't have particularly strong opinions. I've heard of most of these movies, although there is one that I did not recognize, The Sound of Metal. I've never heard of that movie. I don't know what that's about. But I know that Minari, I believe, won the Golden Globe, possibly for Best Picture.
Let's fact check that. I wouldn't be surprised, but I'm gonna. That's fine.
And I remember that being like a big, or actually, might have just been Best Foreign Film. I think that's what it was. I think it was just Best Foreign Film, and it was controversial because it's in English, and people were upset that Best Foreign Film would go to an English film. Yeah, just given. I mean, I wish I had like in-depth knowledge of all these. I could do an Anthony Fantano thing with his, he does for Grammys where he knows all the songs, but I don't know all the songs. Or I don't know all the movies. I will say, of the 2 that I've seen, that I know we've all seen, I don't know if, Adam, if you've seen more than these 2, but it's Mank and Judas and the Black Messiah. I prefer Judas. I think I liked that movie better than Mank. But given that you guys had such a high opinion of Mank, I'd be curious if you guys think that that's actually the better movie.
I probably prefer Mank better, but I don't see Mank winning the Oscar for Best Picture. As much as I like that movie, I don't know. If I try to think with my Oscar brain or whatever, I don't feel like I'd necessarily go for Mank. Something like Judas and the Black Messiah seems much more like politically relevant.
That's true.
This is a weird kind of hang-up I have. It's not fair, but something kind of bothers. Again, I really liked Mank, but something kind of bothers me when the Academy Awards pat themselves on the back for doing for awarding a movie about movies in the movie celebration, and it's just that's what kind of Mank is. I don't know.
That's what La La Land was when it won.
Right. So I don't know. I really did like Mank. I especially, I don't know. If there's I think there's like a screenwriting is one of these awards, I'm pretty sure, right? And then Mank should definitely, hopefully, be a strong consideration, because I haven't seen all these movies, and I'm sure that there are movies that maybe deserve to be there.
Mank's actually not a nomination for original screenplay.
Really?
Yeah, I find, according to the website here, which I find somewhat surprising, because I agree with you there. I do really like the screenplay for this film.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's out of the running. Not a strong consideration then. Well, here's a question. Of the movies that we haven't seen from these Oscars, which one sounds the most appealing to you all?
Minari is the one that I have not seen that I want to see the most. I just as a fan of Korean movies in general, that's part of it. But then also, I've just heard a lot of good things. I actually am not super familiar with what exactly the plot is, but I actually don't mind that for movies that are supposed to be really good, because if they're supposed to be really good, then maybe allowing myself to be completely surprised about what it is can be good as well.
Fair enough.
Trial of the Chicago 7, I've heard, is just not as good. I mean, obviously it's a different movie, but I've heard that it was compared to Judas and the Black Messiah a lot in a lot of the reviews, with the consistent kind of narrative I saw being that Judas was better. So,
yeah, fair enough.
Trial's just an Aaron Sorkin courtroom drama, right? That, from what I know, not that I know much about the movie or have much interest in it, honestly. But
yeah, I know it's like a Netflix movie.
I'm kind of interested in it.
If it was on, I wouldn't be mad.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of a sucker for movies that treat historical kind of figures, because I like to see how actors interpret real people. So I'd be interested in watching that one. I'm wondering, is that the one I'd be most interested in watching? So I'm really intrigued by The Father. Apparently, it's one of those movies that is kind of leads you on a little bit, and then kind of pulls the rug under for you, and those are always interesting to me. So yeah, that's kind of the one that interests me. Plus, guaranteed to be a good performance from the lead in that movie. But yeah, what do you think, Jeff? What interests you?
Out of all the movies on here, the one I've actually heard the most about, I think, is Sound of Metal.
Really?
Because that involves a drummer who starts going deaf, and kind of how he deals with that. I've heard a lot of good things about it, but yeah, I haven't seen the movie. I've also heard about Promising Young Women, which is about I don't know too much about it. I think it's kind of like a reflection, or about sort of like it's not about the Me Too movement, but it's inspired by that, by like the culture of like toxic masculinity, and like just on predatorizing women. But I've heard like the directing style is very interesting. It seems like the kind of like crazy like cult film that I'd be into, but I don't really know that much about it. So those are the two that I've thought to myself, like, oh, that could be interesting. I want to see that. Whereas for the others, I know very little. I've heard of Minari, but from what I know, it's just about a family in like some rural place. Or it's like a Korean immigrant family, but they go to a rural place. And I'm sure you can make an interesting movie out of that, but just the premise alone, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's nice. Cool.
Actually, the movie that I feel like I've heard the most out of was the one that hasn't been mentioned yet, Nomadland. I feel like there was a huge kind of Oscar kind of promotion effort from that movie. I feel like I've seen a lot of that, and it's how critically acclaimed it is, and things like that. Apparently it's about a woman who becomes homeless, so she takes that opportunity to travel all across the United States. Sounds like a Oscar kind of plot.
Yeah, I know Frances McDormand's in it, and I don't know, she always gives a pretty solid performance, I think. Is there any movie that you think got snubbed that should have been on the Best Picture nominee list?
No, I don't see Tenet here.
I still haven't seen that movie. Let's see. I'm remembering
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, no best actor in Sonic the Hedgehog.
There was another movie we talked about in our best of 2020.
Yeah, well, I'm remembering. I'm thinking about ending things, and I'm wondering whether
there was that one, and there was another one that we also talked about a decent amount, which was the one that was like set in the Gothic, and it was like really depressing about like a priest who, you don't know what I'm talking about? It had like it almost sounded like it was gonna be a horror movie, but it wasn't, based on the title.
Did you just like dream up a memory, dude? What
are you talking about? You're talking about the one with Tom Holland. I know.
Right.
I remember hearing that film.
The Devil
was
All
not
the
as
Time.
acclaimed
Yes,
as
that was it. Devil
Okay.
All the Time.
Southern Gothic. Okay, you said
Yeah.
Gothic, and I went to Victorian London.
Yeah. I was thinking of candelabras in the dark. Yeah, I don't know. I really, really liked that movie. But I wonder what nomination I'd put it under. Maybe, yeah, actor in a supporting role.
Most
perhaps.
miserable movie.
More than I'm thinking about ending things. Debatable, but my opinion. But yeah, those were movies that I thought were interesting, but yeah, I guess the Oscar nomination process does not agree. I don't know. There's always, every year, there's always a film that bothers me. For example, I think the previous year, what's it called? Us was one of my very favorite movies of like 2019. And it didn't get any mentions in the Oscars, if I remember correctly. And I remember thinking that does not seem right, especially since the actress played two completely different roles in the movie, and I thought she killed it. But yeah, to be fair, I think I've seen fewer movies this time around than in other years. But overall, the Oscars always does a good job in making me interested in maybe digging up one of these past movies and taking a look. Any other thoughts on that?
It's always fun to see like what the nominees are and what they pick. Although I think they rarely ever pick what my personal favorite would be for that category. Except for 2019 Movie of the Year. They got that right.
All right, here's a question.
Yep.
Are any of you actually going to watch the Oscars?
Good question. Let's see. I feel like this has happened before where I'm just having my day and then I remember, oh, there's kind of an interesting thing that's happening somewhere on the internet. I guess I can go look it up. And I wouldn't. So if that happens to me tomorrow, then yes, I will be following the Oscars to some degree. But I may forget about it.
Yeah, I thought it was because the Grammys had like there was like a big hoopla about how the Grammys were losing, like the amount of viewership went way down.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious if that same fate is awaiting the Oscars. Are like award shows just less relevant than they used to be, or is that?
Well, I mean, it's very much a COVID phenomenon, isn't it?
Maybe.
I just, since people aren't going to movie theaters, then maybe they aren't thinking about movies as much. Of course, that doesn't apply very much to the Grammys, I would think, at least. That's a good question.
Yeah, I think for the Grammys, people don't watch the whole thing. They just watch the clips of the concerts. And that's about everything people feel like they need to know. And they look at a list on Google who won, if they care.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever watched a Grammys ceremony in my lifetime.
Neither
like just
have I.
sat down and watched the Grammys. I've seen clips, of course, but
And actually, I think the reason that I think I put more stock in the Oscars than the Grammys is that the Oscars are able, I feel, a little bit more to actually take a really like large stock of all of the films that are out there, because it's so expensive to make a film. There aren't that many, right, in a year. But with music, there's so much music that like they can only focus on like obviously these really popular acts, and only really popular understandings of genre for these acts, right? So because of that, their selection is like, maybe to me their selection seems like extremely narrow and strange, but like again, I just think it's almost an uphill battle to actually try and do an award competition for music like that. But maybe that's just me.
No, fair enough. I think I agree with that. Definitely the Oscars. I think the intention of both of them are kind of different, because I think the intention of the Oscars is to get audience eyes on movies they wouldn't have otherwise seen. That's why you will never see an Avengers Endgame in the Oscars, even if everyone thinks it's an amazing movie. It doesn't matter, because the Oscars are for shining a light on more like independent-ish, independent in big quotes, kind of movies that that people might not have heard of, except for that they won an Oscar, as opposed to just patting someone on the back for winning, which is kind of the Grammys is. The Grammys is just like, you did it. You're the most popular. We're going to give you an award that says you were the most popular, and that's good for you.
Yeah. I think that's true. So, and given that we're talking about the Oscars, I'm kind of curious, what do you think was like the best acting or like what, based on the movies just that we have seen, what do you think are if you were to construct your own Oscars from just movies you've seen, what would be best actor, etc.?
I mean, the lead from Judas and the Black Messiah, I think, is one of the best acting I've seen in like a decade. I thought it was incredible.
Interesting, because both Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield are nominated in the same category, which is Best Supporting Role. So yeah, or I just find that interesting because there's not one of them's considered the lead; they're both considered supports. So I guess
that's true.
Yeah,
interesting. Huh.
Yeah, they were great. Yeah, special Daniel Kaluuya.
Yeah, and when I said lead, that's who I was referring to. But I suppose, I guess, I mean, even though the movie's about him, was he the main character? I don't know.
I'd actually put Lakeith Stanfield's character as more of a claim to the lead, because that's the character that changes, right? Or the character whose conflict is at the center of the movie. But yeah, I agree that those are great actors. Actually, it's kind of interesting. The rule that sticks out in my mind from all the movies you've seen was the actress in I'm thinking
of Ending.
Yeah, like that was it felt like liminal almost, the way that she acted in order to change with whatever mood the film was reflecting. I don't know. I feel like that really stood out to me as a great performance.
No, definitely. And Gary Oldman, of course. I love Gary Oldman, so whenever he shows up, I'm gonna like it. And obviously, he did a great job in Mank.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was nominated for a leading role. Whether he'll win that, I don't actually know.
I would expect it. Of course, then I thought that movie should have had screenwriting, and I guess it didn't. But oh well. All right. Any other thoughts on the Oscars? Okay. Well, we all recently, or semi-recently, watched Godzilla versus King Kong. And I guess my first question is, last time we were talking about this movie in our previous episode, we were talking about how we were going to see it. And it seemed like we were all talking about like, what is this movie trying to accomplish, right? And I think there was kind of a consensus. Feel free to push back on this. There was kind of a consensus like, oh, this is, the fun monster movie. If you're going into this movie, it's because you want to see monsters fight. Well, did this film succeed at its goals / meet our expectations? Oh, and small reminder that this is the non-spoiler section of the review for this film.
So I would say it succeeded its goal in the sense that it was the hit. So, I mean, that's what the movie makers cared about, obviously.
Sure. Yeah.
And congratulations for being what Tenet wanted to be, the first COVID hit movie in the U.S. And then second, was it entertaining? Was it entertaining monster fight? I think so. I thought
absolutely.
It was plenty fun. I guess is spoilers, so I won't spoil the ending, but the ending was quite amazing in terms of monster spectacle. It was about anything I could have asked for, more than I could have even imagined happened in the ending. So maybe for someone who's more familiar with Godzilla, maybe it wasn't that spectacular. But for me, who was less familiar, it was like kind of novel, interesting twist to the end.
Oh no, this movie certainly fulfills on its premise of Godzilla versus Kong.
Yes.
If you went to the movie to see that, you will probably be happy. This has like some great kaiju action. Like,
yeah.
You can tell the filmmakers, I think, just took all the criticism from the previous movies and generally listened to it, because the previous movies, they'll say not enough monster screen time, and then like the fights are like too like muddy, unclear, like obscured by like rain and hard to see. And then like the human characters, like we don't care about them, like we can't relate to their drama. And so in this movie, they're like, all right, yeah, the humans are dumb, like, but I guess we kind of need them in a movie anyway, so let's pretend they're doing stuff. And then we get to the monsters, and it's all like beautiful. It's glorious. Like, the fights are long. They're like clear. They keep going on, and
yeah. It's actually kind of, I was thinking about the character criticisms of past movies, and I do think that the criticisms are still warranted here. But at this point, it's less of it. It's felt less like in this movie that the kind of weak characterization of the characters in the first movies, when they first came out, it felt like this was like, oh, this is a mistake, this is something wrong that the filmmaker
very
did.
intentional.
Whereas this time it feels much more intentional, much more, it's like now they have defiantly decided that these characters are just props to get our action figures, our giant action figures, to fight against each other. And yeah, I think it worked out pretty well. I don't think my favorite of these monsters movies in this particular monster universe is still the first Godzilla, just because there were cinematography and scenes in the original Godzilla that I remember like actually feeling like odd to watch. It just like really, really cool ideas for how to make the monster seem really, really threatening in that movie. And there are great, cool action sequences, but nothing that reaches that zenith I felt in the first Godzilla movie of this series. But yeah, I thought it was good too.
So how familiar are you guys with the monster universe? I've only seen 2 now. This is my second. And the only other one I've seen is the first King Kong and Skull Island. So that was my only introduction. I've not seen any of the other movies. This is the first time I've seen this version of Godzilla. And between the 2 movies, I would say that I enjoyed this one more than Kong on Skull Island. And part of that is that, I mean, I kind of, Skull Island tried to be a serious movie, and Godzilla versus Kong was like, no, this is a movie you watch. It's a popcorn flick, drink a few beers, laugh at some of the absurdity, shout with your friends when something blows up. And that's what this movies always were meant to be. I suppose if you go back to the original King Kong and the original Godzilla, there was, they had a deeper message to them, and I suppose there might be some goal in trying to get back to that to some degree, but when I think of giant monster fights, I'm not thinking deep. I'm thinking I want to see some cool action, and this movie delivered. Actually, this might be a hot take. I really liked the performances this movie a lot. I think that they did what was intended super well. Like all of them, like every actor didn't feel like a real person at all. But like it seemed like that was the point. Again, like it's like
right,
they were aiming for this kind of caricature of a person, almost like a cartoon character person, with about as much character depth as that asks for. But rather than that being boring, they managed to just turn it up to 11 all the time. Like I love the conspiracy theory guy. He was just incredible the whole time. I actually like enjoyed seeing him on screen because it was just like, how can this guy outdo the last absurdity that he said? And then the fact, I mean, it was just the whole thing was like that. The romance.
The actors were told to do a bad job, and I applaud them for doing that bad job.
Yeah, but like, I mean, I don't know how hard or difficult that would be as an actor because I mean, you can be bad and boring. I think they were a pretty good job at being entertainingly bad. Kind of like Sharknado, had like a Sharknado-y feel to it, where they're playing it straight, but they're clearly being absurd. But it doesn't feel like they're like nod and winking at you, which would have ruined it, right? It seemed like they were taking it seriously, even though obviously it was all ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really remember much about the acting. I remember the conspiracy theory guy, just because. Yeah, half the time I actually didn't know what he was saying because he was just talking about random gibberish that, as far as I know, he could have been saying anything, but it kind of fits his character since he's a conspiracy theorist. But yeah, so what, like I said before, the monster fights were spectacular, and that's really what I remember the most. And actually, this isn't spoiler section yet, so I won't say anything, but like halfway through the movie, there's kind of a surprise that I did not know about, and I was very excited as a lifelong Godzilla fan. So, yeah, I mean, at that point, I was sold. I want to clap, so.
I think I know the scene you're talking about, but shall we move to that section so we can talk about it?
Yeah, I guess before, just to put a bow in it, I think it's safe to say we would all recommend it.
Yeah, it's...
And to almost anybody. I mean, unless you're like pretentious and can't enjoy a dumb movie.
Hey, that's not a nice way. Unless you're a demanding viewer, then...
Don't go in expecting Shakespeare. That's all I'll say. But I would recommend it.
No, yeah. I remember thinking, and I feel like I've heard other reviewers say this too, this movie is basically exactly what you think it is, and it fulfills on that premise. So
you already know whether you like this movie. So if you're
kind of
the audience, go ahead.
But just to kind of because I mean it's easy to say, and there's a lot of truth to that. But I actually just watched the Mortal Kombat movie just yesterday. And that is another movie that is exactly what you think it is, but it's just done worse. Oh. Like, I would say that Godzilla versus King Kong was, like, entertaining dumb, and Mortal Kombat was still dumb, but less entertaining. And so, like, there is a way to mess that kind of movie up, and there's a way to do it well. And this one did it well. I've seen plenty of bad movies that were trying to be, bad in the way that this movie is, that were actually bad because, the fights were bad, the graphics were bad. Like, just because it doesn't have witty dialogue doesn't mean that there wasn't a chance to mess this up. And this movie didn't mess it up, I think.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I'd quite use that terminology. I don't know if Godzilla versus Kong was trying to be bad.
It's not Sharknado.
Yeah, it's not
different,
trying to be like Sharknado or Troll 2 or anything. It legitimately like takes, I guess, the Godzilla versus Kong part seriously. Like when it comes to like the on-screen like action and getting the monsters together, that's all taken like very like seriously, and it's like trying to be done with like craft and skill. Like the movie's not necessarily trying to be wink wink. It just knows that it knows what the audience is going there for, and it focuses to use its skill on that aspect of the film, I guess, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I have not seen the new Mortal Kombat movie, but I wonder if it holds up to the original 95 classic.
But
okay, but we can move on to I guess the spoiler section now of Godzilla versus Kong.
All right.
Mecha Godzilla. Oh man, that was so cool. It was so cool. Like it was my favorite part of the movie. Well, as soon as Mecha Godzilla started fighting, I was like, this is incredible. It looked so awesome. And then I loved the Tokyo, the city of Tokyo, which did not feel like a real city at all. Oh, yeah. Didn't they move? Okay.
No, it was definitely yeah, they just
okay.
No, it was in Hong Kong the whole time.
Gotcha. Well, the city of Hong Kong during the fight did not feel like a real city, because it was just like this neon battlefield, more so than like you weren't thinking at all about people screaming, or there was like a few shots of that, but really it was just an excuse to use CGI explosions of buildings. Like that's what it was. And it looked really cool. It was like very different than other movies that use a city landscape for as a kind of a set for destruction. This was a very aesthetically pleasing version.
It looked like the cover of like a synthwave album.
Yeah, basically.
You know, actually, you bring that up. I actually think it's interesting because I think the movie does work, like a lot of work, to make us not really care about the toll or destruction. Because like early in the movie, like there's a villainous character, and that's her character, like is to be a snooty villain, right? And then she tries to escape at one point, and King Kong snatches her ship and blows up. And I realized that as I was watching this movie that like just how prop-ish these characters were, which was good because monsters need props to destroy. Kind of. So yeah, I thought that the battles were super awesome. You know, one thing that I thought was maybe a minor criticism of this movie is that this is a movie that is very aware of kind of how silly and absurd it is, right? And so this may be controversial, but I kind of thought it would be funnier, if that makes sense. Like, I'm surprised by how, even despite how like absurd and comic style it is, just how like humorless a lot of the movie played out. And like, because when a movie is so absurd that characters are literally saying lines like, "Well, round 2 goes to King Kong," you know, like winky wink. What are we watching this movie for? It's just, I don't know. I just feel like you should almost. I expect a level of humor to kind of go with that, and it just wasn't very funny ever. But you know, it was action and it was great. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think I understand that. I think you do have to be careful with like trying to add humor in this kind of movie, because you don't want to venture into wink wink territory.
Right.
Because then like, yeah, it's like finding, like the right balance. And yeah, the movie's not particularly funny. I did laugh out loud at one scene, which is when Godzilla's just like screaming in Kong's face for like 10 seconds straight, and then Kong starts screaming
back. That actually made me laugh as well. It's like he had him beat, and then they had the rematch, and then I guess Godzilla is just like, "You're not worth it," and then started turning back.
Oh, and major props to the filmmakers for having the monsters win against each other. Like, I feel like it's so easy for these movies to be like, oh, it was a draw, it was a tie, they were just as strong as each other. But you know, like, I mean, like, I think they recognize that when you do that, the fight feels cheap, and I don't feel like their fights felt cheap. I felt like they were fighting for something, and one of them won. And that was great, you know. I mean, obviously, like King Kong still gets his kind of say for helping to defeat Mechagodzilla at the end, but he lost, and you know that was good. Good decision on the filmmaker's part to commit to a winner.
Yeah.
In that
Well,
movie.
yeah, and I'd say most Godzilla movies are actually like that. I feel like in every,
But usually we know it's
35 million
Godzilla that's going to win, right? Whereas with two equal kind of monsters,
That's true. In this universe, they kind of have been somewhat equally, but
I think they did a good job of like, if I was trying to say who is stronger, King Kong or Godzilla, I think Godzilla is clearly the stronger one. But Godzilla, I mean, or King Kong, if he can utilize like tools around him, right, can maybe can win with that. Essentially, like he kind of needs his little axe, or he needs the human allies. Like he needs something to kind of give him the edge. But with that, he can come on top. Whereas Godzilla doesn't make friends, so he has that going against him.
yeah. Oh, but just going back to Mechagodzilla real quick, that scene started, and like it kept going. And I was like, "Oh, are they doing what I think they might be doing?" And they did, and I literally had like the grin of like a 5-year-old because I had no idea Mechagodzilla was going to be in this, and I'm really glad that I was able to not somehow learn that from spoilers. So that was like one of the nicest surprises I've had in a movie in a while, I think.
And I will say that, like, I think Godzilla and King Kong, they don't look bad. You know, they're just CGI monsters that I wouldn't say they look particularly great either. Mechagodzilla looked great. Like, that was like CGI, like all the little moving parts and stuff, and that he just looked really, really cool. And they just did a really good job with that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's high praise to the film. It's like, I feel like if the movie is able to channel your inner 5-year-old, then like, what is there higher praise for a Godzilla movie? I'm not quite sure there is. So, but yeah, it's very cool, and also props to the movie makers for not allowing like the advertising agencies to put that in, because I know that often with movies like this, they'll ruin the surprise in order to get people more interested to go see the movie. But they really wanted to make that moment of reveal for the true fans to be as impactful as it did. And it wasn't that impactful.
Yeah. I loved it.
JL, how does this hold up to other Godzilla, like Shin Godzilla or Godzilla 2000? Like, how does this rank in terms of the Godzilla pantheon of movies?
Well, for Shin Godzilla is actually, that's not just a monster fighting movie. There's actually things going on in Shin Godzilla. It's very reminiscent of the original movie somewhat. So it's not like Shin Godzilla original Godzilla level, but in terms of the others, I mean, and this is the thing, I have like, nostalgia blinders on, obviously, because I've been watching these movies since I was a kid. But this, I'd say it's just about as good as like some of my favorites. I mean, in terms of like pure monster fighting, this, like, it's hard to call this the winner just because this movie's made differently. Before, like, there was a charm in watching actual people in actual rubber suits try to wrestle with each other. And this feels very, modern. We've got like all the special effects. We can do anything now. And so it feels a little different. But that being said, like the fight scenes, like they have like choreography. Like they're very entertaining in their own way. No, this, yeah, I mean, I was very pleased. This holds up with most of the other Godzilla films, in my opinion. And it's never been like those classic Godzilla films are like amazing pieces of cinema, like artistic masterpieces. Like they're, I mean, it's dudes in rubber suits like wrestling with each other, But I mean, yeah, as a lifelong fan, I was very, very happy.
Are there any other thoughts on this film? Any last perspectives?
Yeah, I mean, it's a film that's kind of hard to talk about at length because there's only so many different ways you could go. Like, dude, it was awesome when he like punched the monkey in the face, and like, then there's like a big robot dinosaur, and they're crushing the city.
Remember the laser axe? Who remembers the laser? Yeah. Yep. Fair enough.
Does this make you more interested to watch the Monster Universe movies you haven't seen, or watch any new monster movie? I assume they're going to keep on making them.
Yeah, I mean, this did really well at the box office, right? Like you said earlier, this did what Tenet was trying to do, basically. And I mean, yeah, I've seen all the MonsterVerse movies so far, and I imagine they'll keep making them. This did really well. So, and yeah, I'll go see anything with Godzilla in it. And even if they don't use Godzilla, if they use like King Kong or maybe make up some other new monster, yeah, I'll go see it. I mean, I am glad that the monster cinematic universe is a thing now. And that it's actually becoming one. They didn't screw it up like other companies where they like release one movie and then they're like, oh, never mind. Did anyone see the Mummy movie?
I heard about what they were trying to do with that, but I didn't see it. I heard it was horrendous.
Yeah, same.
I will say it does make me. I don't know if I'm going to watch every one. I don't know if I'll see King of the Monsters because I heard that was kind of mediocre. But I am more curious. I'm more invested in seeing the first Godzilla than I was previously. Because then, I'll have seen the first King Kong. Then I've seen King Kong versus Godzilla. Maybe I should see the first Godzilla. And then who knows? Maybe I'll like that, and then I'll see King of Monsters. We'll see.
Yeah. I liked King of the Monsters too. I understand the criticism it got, but the strengths in that movie are also the monsters. And I mean, and I'm also a lifelong Godzilla fan, and King of the Monsters had like some of like the all-time OG kaiju, like King Ghidorah and Rodan, Mothra. So you're into the monsters like I am, it's worth seeing. But I understand.
Is there any more monsters, like famous ones, for these guys to fight?
I am wondering whether there's a monster that could carry an audience comparable to King Kong and Godzilla. There isn't like a headlining monster, I feel like, that does that job.
The one thing
if there were, they were used in King of the Monsters.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know tons of like monsters that were used in like the Godzilla films. I mean, there's some other classics like for example, like Gamera, but I don't know if Legendary Pictures has the rights to Gamera. I've never heard anything about them like rebooting like Gamera in America or anything. As for, I mean, I would have said Mechagodzilla, but they used Mechagodzilla in this film.
Yeah, because like a cinematic universe with just 2 stars is hard to do.
I wonder, is there like a monster like that isn't even part of that universe that has the same kind of weight of these?
So the only thing I could think of, I was thinking that maybe they'll do a collaboration with Jurassic World, but apparently Fast and Furious is on that. So
Oh,
We might
really?
get
Wait.
Fast and Furious month. Yep, you heard that
Run
right.
that sentence by me again.
There is rumors that Fast and Furious is going to do a like a crossover movie with Jurassic World.
Wow.
Because why not?
But I wouldn't
Generally
put that past
speechless.
Fast and Furious even a little bit. that does sound like something they'd do.
See, I totally expect Fast and Furious to do that. What surprises me is that Jurassic World would go along with it. I mean, I'm sure the movie will do just fine. So the investors will get their money back.
Nah,
But yeah, the Jurassic
my
World
dream
monster.
world, like Pacific Rim, will meet like Godzilla or something.
Hey,
That
they should
could be
bring that back. Yeah, and they should get Guillermo del Toro back in the director seat. And I'd be
Yeah,
really
I never saw the second Pacific Rim. I heard it
Not
was
a
not good.
all interest lost.
I guess you could do a, Jurassic World does not own the rights to dinosaurs. You could
Fair
just
enough.
throw in like, and here's T-Rex, like whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you can make up your own monsters. They've
That's
been
true.
doing that for this cinematic universe. I mean, Godzilla 2014 had an original kaiju for it. The King Kong movie or Skull Island, like, it didn't have, I guess, any new like big monsters, but there were like new creations for that film. So yeah, and yeah, I feel like they could like go back and bring back some classic monsters, but like I'd actually be excited to see like what they could like come up with, like just something new out of the blue.
Yeah, fair enough. Right. Well, shall we move on to what we've been watching, what we've been reading, playing? Any last thoughts?
Sure.
Cool. What have you been watching?
So I've actually been on a big movie kick. I've been watching a bunch of movies.
Oh,
But the one I think that is probably most interesting to the audience would be Mortal Kombat. So the movie was fine. It wasn't so boring that I turned it off halfway or anything. Like I watched it all the way to the end. There is the very first time they like, they like to throw in a lot of catchphrases, a lot of hoods and like nods and winks to the movie. They'll be like, "Hey, finish him," and someone will kill him and be like, "Fatality." Like someone will say it out loud as like dialogue. But and like the first time and then like some of the fight scenes are really brutal, and so like they're enjoyably gory and things as you would hope that they would be. The problem the movie runs into is that they just keep on doing it. Like this person fights this person, then this person fights this person, this person fights this person, and by like the seventh fatality thing, it's like it doesn't have the shock value anymore. It's a little bit less interesting. Also, they can't, like Godzilla versus King Kong got to get away with the fact that King Kong Godzilla don't have to be acted, right? They're just monsters. They just have to act like monsters. These guys have to act, and some of them aren't good at it. So like, that's a big flaw too, that some of these characters are just really bland, stilted, just bad acting. And they try to draw you in with this like they do the thing where like the motivation of the characters is that like the bad guy kills your wife or your kids. How many times has that been done? And so like, and that's all the only thing, like they're like, that happens at the very, very beginning of the movie. So then it's like, oh, so you understand the rage now. Now they must fatality people all over the place because they get revenge. And like that kind of motivation makes it really hard for like an audience member, at least for me, to care, because it's just, first of all, I didn't get to meet the family. Like they have little screen time, so like, you know what I mean. Like it was just kind of lazy-ish writing, and maybe Mortal Kombat doesn't deserve the high class super. Maybe it'd be boring to meet the families of the Mortal Kombat fighters, but it's just. when the whole movie is just fights, you have to give me a reason to care about the fights, and they weren't great at doing that.
I remember that was the question I was asking when I was hearing about this movie. Will they do enough to care about the fights? Apparently not.
And like I said, like I didn't hate it. It wasn't horrible. The fights are well choreographed, so that's cool. Like I said, there's a lot of nods and things to the game. So if you are a fan of the game and you just want to see the game on big screen, like they did that for you. But just as like a movie overall, especially if you don't care about Mortal Kombat as a series, I don't know if I could recommend it to you.
Enough.
Yeah. I have a passing interest in it just because I liked the games when I was younger. And I liked the movie back from the 90s when I was like, in like 4th or 5th grade, which is like the perfect age to watch that movie. I can't imagine it going back and being blown away by the original Mortal Kombat film. But yeah, I might check it out.
Enough. Well, let's see. As far as what I've been watching, on Netflix recently, there's been kind of they've been putting on these. Trying to remember the genre, where it's basically a documentary, but you see kind of a narrative play out with actors during it. I think
are they history?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Exactly which ones you're talking about. If they're history documentaries, there's
yeah,
one about samurai and one about pirates.
That's exactly the two. I've watched all of them. Okay.
Yeah, they're good.
They're good. I like them both. I like the Sengoku period one better than the pirate one. For a couple different reasons. I felt like the pirate one had really awkward kind of acting and dialogue during the acted scenes, whereas in the Japanese one there was a lot more of the narration that I just thought was just better. I understood what was both of them are pretty easy to understand, but I felt like I got a lot of insight into the one on the Sengoku period of Japan, whereas the pirate one often was just restating things that they had already said over and over. The way I'm describing this is making the pirate one sound really bad, and it wasn't. I thought it was good, but they were both good. I recommend them. Interesting historical stuff. That's it.
Right. I haven't been watching much, but lately I finally got around to playing Disco Elysium, which is a game that came out in 2019, but I've been wanting to play it for forever, and I was finally able to because I have hardware now capable of it.
Did it meet your expectations?
Actually, yes, and I had very high expectations because it seemed like the kind of game I would be into. It's very narrative driven. I mean, the gameplay is essentially just going around and like talking to people and trying to figure stuff out. So there's no like traditional combat. It's kind of like, dialogue, like trees, like options you can speak to people. And every now and then there'll kind of be like a skill check. Like you can try to like convince a person to do this or maybe knock them out, and you have like a 27% chance, 95% chance, depending on what you've like put your skill points into.
Wait, what's the game called?
Disco Elysium.
So
the premise is...
I wouldn't expect what you were telling me based on that.
Yeah. Well, the premise is you wake up and you're kind of like totally an amnesiac because you've just been on this like huge bender. But everyone tells you like, oh yeah, you're a cop in this town and you're trying to solve a murder, which is apparently true because your partner shows up and it's like, let's go solve this murder. But there's just lots of like just interesting like directions and things thrown in your way. Like my character, the way I like the class I picked, like my tie would like start talking to me at times, and my brain would be like, are those drugs? You should do them right now. Do the drugs. And yeah, it's a very interesting and unique game, kind of surreal at parts, which I really like. I mean, this game made me like laugh, genuinely like kind of like gripped my heart at parts. It made me like just think about my own life in general and choices I've made. It's very, very well written. maybe the best written video game I've ever played. I find the narratives extremely engaging. So if that's your kind of thing, if you want a game to play like just basically for story elements, you're gonna have to do a lot of reading. Well, you can listen to the voice acting too. That's what it is. So it's like, it's not in like a traditional video game sense where you need any like actual skills or reflexes. It's just kind of like a languidly paced RPG sort of. But yeah, I was pretty blown away, and I had high expectations. So Disco Elysium, if you haven't played it yet, check it out.
Let's take a look at that. All right. Well, see you next time on our next episode of Amateur Theory Podcast. We don't really have a very strong idea about what we'll be watching next. So I guess it'll be a surprise for all of us. All right. Until next time. See ya.
Goodbye, everybody.
See you.